Hey now, welcome back to the Deadology Podcast. From Pencil Hill Studio, New Paltz, New York. I'm your host, Howard Weiner. Today is January 22nd, 2024. This is Season 2, Episode 4 of the podcast. And today we'll be taking a time travel back to Augusta, Maine, October 11th and 12th, 1984, with the 12th being an extraordinary show. And we're also going to examine the psychology of Grateful Dead set lists. So 1984 tour starts. I'm a student. I was probably working part-time somewhere, extremely part-time. Part-time just to make enough money for tickets and money for the tour. But I was a student at Rockland Community College, Suffern, New York. And what a great time it was to be on that campus and to be a Deadhead. The place was just packed with Deadheads. I met so many people there exchanging tapes. Obviously, it's not as many people as a big university. The Dead were huge on campuses back in the early 80s in New York State, as I'm sure they were in the ensuing years. But this is really kind of where the Deadhead movement of the 80s took off on these college campuses all throughout the United States, but there was especially popular in New York with all the shows they were playing at different colleges in the area. But Rockland Community College, all I remember is meeting friends, sitting in that parking lot before class, listening to tapes, exchanging tapes. Great time. Even for the movie night, they often had the Grateful Dead movie night there, at least once a month. So we would go into the theater in Rockland Community College, watch the Grateful Dead movie. Morning Dew would come on. We'd stand at attention like it was the national anthem. Good times in Rockland, but it's October 1984. The fall tour is about to start. It's about a week away. And in my psychology class, I think this was the second psychology. It wasn't Psychology 101, but I can't remember what it was exactly. I get to class, and for an hour and a half, I was just writing set lists down, what the Grateful Dead were going to play on that tour. I'd start the page, Charlotte, October 5th, 1984, and then I would make up my set list. Not necessarily predictions, because you can never predict what the Grateful Dead were going to do, but I would take the same formula they would use with the accordance of the Grateful Dead universe and the way they used to lay out sets. I did an entire tour during my psychology class. The professor must have wondered what the hell I was doing, because I was just writing notes nonstop, like crazy. And what I did for these set lists, I didn't do anything out of the realm of what might happen. Like I wouldn't start a set off with St. Stephen. I would basically use the rules of what songs fit into certain slots and create an entire tour. It was a good way to kill an hour and a half, but people were so excited about going on tour back in those days. It was a world upon itself. The Grateful Dead became more mainstream once Touch of Grey, 1987 came around. Then everybody, it was kind of open, go see the Grateful Dead. There were stadiums, 80,000 people could go see them. But it was kind of like a special thing to be seeing the Grateful Dead in these small places like Augusta in 1984, because only a certain amount of people knew about it. And we kind of had such a brotherhood back then, because the people who knew about it, you knew they had discerning tastes and awesome taste in music if they were going to catch the Grateful Dead, especially if they were doing a whole tour. So the tour starts off, the actual tour. I never kept the pages I wrote. I wish I had those pages just to have a good laugh and look at what I wrote. But the reality soon put the fantasy set lists to rest. I never even checked back. Went to Charlotte and Richmond with my friend Perry. We had two other people in the back seat. Can't recall who they were. And those shows were they okay. They weren't that great, that memorable. Starting a tour. So one night they do Cat Rider, Estimated Eyes. That was the first night. Charlotte, Richmond got a Scarlet Fire. You couldn't complain about that. That's pretty cool. But the rest of the set lists weren't that great, and the shows weren't that hot. I really haven't had a chance to check back too much over the years. But so it started off like less than impressive. I think the greatest memory I have, it's incredible, the greatest memory I have from that little tour, my friend Perry had a cold. He gets into my car with a Wallbaum's bag and a box of tissues. By the time he gets to Charlotte, it's a Wallbaum's bag full of tissues. And so that probably tells you that there weren't that many great highlights at the shows. But that was part of the deal, man. You go see the Grateful Dead for a tour. Somewhere along that tour, you're dealing with a cold, no matter how you caught it. And I got my cold. I was a little sick in Augusta. But the music definitely helped me overcome it on that night. So those are the first two shows, Charlotte and Richmond. Then they go to Worcester, Massachusetts. Their second time playing Worcester. They played there the year before in '83. And boy, was my faith restored. On October 8th, they played a really good show, hot, cool song selection. And then October 9th, John Lennon's birthday. And the Grateful Dead played awesome shows on October 9th for whatever reason. One of the great days in Grateful Dead history. You go back to '76, the Great Oakland Show. They played Denver's '77. Just a whole bunch of great shows on that day. But this Worcester show, the set list was unreal, beyond imagination. I never could have conceived of anything like this when I was sitting in that psychology class putting a set list together. You know, they opened up with the Dancing in the Streets, Big Railroad, Let It Grow to end the first set. Second set, Help on the Way, Slipknot, Franklin's, Jack Straw, He's Gone. First smokestack in 18 years since was it 18 years? 13 years since Pig's passing. They did a Throwing Stones, Stella Blue, instead of doing the Throwing Stones, Not Fade Away. Just incredible. Every turn was exciting at that show. And that was like, that's definitely where the Grateful Dead came through, why we kept going back for those shows where they would just pull out these set lists beyond imagination, nothing you could have ever thought of before they hit the road. So going into Augusta, they had a tough act to follow, after the Worcester shows. And we get to the October 11th show. And Augusta, Maine, about an hour north of Portland. But before I go into that, I'm just going to mention my little trip to Augusta last year. I was writing my book, The Grateful Pilgrimage, where I went back to the entire 1983 tour on the anniversary dates. So I was in Portland, October 18th, 83 was the show. I was there 39 years later on the anniversary date. And my thing was to get inside the venues and listen to the show. And then I had an off day, and I was going to pick another venue to go to in Augusta. And when I was in Portland, I was going to pick something else in Maine. And I listened to that Uncle John's playing in the band Morning Dew. I got the order wrong there. It was playing Uncle John's Morning Dew from October 12th, 84. And I knew right away I had to go to Augusta. I had to see that building because that was one of the most incredible things I ever saw on my touring day, that October 12th show. So I took the trip up to Augusta, and I got there, and it was like either a deja vu or flashback, just some kind of odd feeling hit me. I looked at the building, and I felt like it was 1984 again. One of the couple cool things about the Augusta Civic Center, it's exactly as it was in 1984. The outside hasn't changed. They haven't changed the name of the building. Most venues these days, they're changing the name of the building. I'm surprised when I got there, it wasn't the Taco Bell Civic Center or something, because few places keep their history anymore. They sell out the name, but this is still the Augusta Civic Center, and it's the most simple, plain-looking building. It almost looks like a high school or something. It's that plain-looking, just a brick building by itself, but very cool, great sound inside. I went to the website. It's I think I read 5,100 seats, 6,800 capacity. But for the Grateful Dead on October 11th and October 12th, they sold 8,700 tickets. They figured with the skinny hippies, let's get 2,000 more people in there, But it was 8,700, and I got those facts from my friend Dave Davis, who's writing a book on that particular topic, the economic history of the Grateful Dead. what the attendance figures were, what the Dead grossed. It's cool because nobody's really touched that area before. It's going to be an interesting book he comes out with. We're going to eventually get him on the show here when he gets a little closer to being done with the book. But thanks for the figures, Dave. The tickets were $11.50. Incredible times, 1984. Dave was at the 1979 show, so they played Augusta 3 times. They played in September 2nd, 79. Great show, opened up with a Jack Straw. Music Never Stopped in the first set. And then I believe it was Terrapin and To Let It Grow in the second set. And then just the 2 shows in 84. And the Grateful Dead became too big to play a building like Augusta after 1984. So these were the last shows. But wow, they went out with a bang on that 84 show. And while I was revisiting this a year ago, I noticed on the inside there was a plaque for Elvis Presley. Elvis fans paid to have a plaque put in there. A cool thing. I don't think it was there when I saw them and when I saw the Dead in 84, but it showed that Elvis had played there May 24th, 1977, and that was the only time Elvis Presley ever played in Maine. And one other insane fact, when he died that summer, the next night he was due to play Cumberland County Civic Center in Portland.
My mama told me, Papa done told me, that gal you fooling with, she ain't no good for you, but that's alright. That's alright. That's alright. Right now, mama, in every way you do.
That's All Right, Mama. Jerry Garcia, Merle Saunders, John Kahn, 1973. So Elvis Presley died at the age of 42. When Jerry and the Dead hit the stage in Augusta 1984, Jerry had just turned 42 a couple months earlier, and he was in the worst physical condition probably of his entire life, of his life up until that point. We kind of got used to it being on tour. Jerry putting on a few pounds every tour. I think it started most noticeably at the end of 82 into 83. It was like a normal thing to see him about 10 pounds more each tour, and he would just stand there. And obviously, if you look at it from outside of being a fan, being at the concert, he looked terrible, but his guitar playing was insane. It was so great. Unlike when he actually hit the end of the road in 1995, he kind of looked weak on stage, and you could really sense the end was near. But the energy of Jerry's playing in 1984 was still off the hook, even though he would just stand there in one spot and just play. It was an incredible thing to see, godlike. Is so brilliantly unusual. So the Dead roll into Augusta. And it's a blessing that we got 12 more years, or 11 more years of Jerry after 1984, because, easily something could happen into 1984 that could have been the end, like in 1986 when he actually had the coma. That was kind of life-saving, almost a blessing that gave him another 9 years to keep doing what he loves, and we could keep doing what we love, listening to the Grateful Dead and Jerry Garcia band. So as I was thinking back to the Augusta shows for this episode, obviously I know the October 12th show, classic show. I go to the tape often. October 11th was like a mystery to me. The only thing I could remember was that it was a good show and I was happy with it. So I went back to the tape, took a look at the set list, and then I was like, oh, okay, that's why I forgot it. Show opens up with a good shakedown, and then it kind of falls into a pattern of less than desirable songs compared to what you can get. Once again, the psychology of the Grateful Dead set list comes in here. End of the first set is Looks Like Rain, Might As Well. They played Might As Well 19 times in the first set in 1984, much more than any other song. Second set opens with Bucket, Hell in a Bucket, Touch of Grey, Women Are Smarter, Ship of Fools, Playin in the band. Now, Playing in the Band is pretty hot from this night, but that's probably as undesirable a four-song start as you'd want to see compared to what you could see. I mean, China Cat Rider was due, Scarlet Fire could have been played. So you are sitting out there at the show hoping for these things, and then you get the new songs, which weren't played as well as they would be in a few years. Hell in a Bucket, Touch of Grey, Women Are Smarter. Just like it, as far as the song list, couldn't have come out with much worse of a list to start off a set. And but they didn't. They came back, and probably one of the reasons I like the show, they came back strong after drums with Dear Mr. Fantasy, Black Peter, Sugar Magnolia. Once again, not spectacular, but that was part of the deal. In order to get a show like October 9th, where you're just blown away by all these different choices in the right spots, a couple times a tour you'd have to swallow a show that was less than desirable to you, the way the songs were lined up, and it was okay. It was part of the deal. You're like, okay, we're going to get them the next night. They're saving Scarlet Fire for the next night, however you were thinking about it. But the Dead clearly had a pattern of playing the songs. 11 show tour. You're not seeing Scarlet Fire more than 3 times. You might get 3 or 4 China Cats, maybe 2 or 3 Help on the Way, Slipknot, Franklin's. So they were set in their ways. So it was like, if you look at Europe 72 and you wonder why people love what they did so much back in 72, part of it was they had just come up with the songs and there was this great excitement and the band was just pulling in the right direction and just peaking and exponentially getting better, which you can never outdo a period like that. If Bob Dylan, Rolling Stones, you name the band, 6, 7 years in, 8 years in, that's usually where these great bands are at their peak, and they'll do great stuff as they move on, but you can almost never outdo what you did in that period. But the other thing which worked and makes those tapes so great, one night you got a 40-minute Dark Star, next night you got a 35-minute other one, and there was no no easy outs to the sets. Every night they gave you master presentations. So what happened as the Grateful Dead evolved, and everybody has to evolve, is their set list strategy, the most interesting experiment ever in music. And none of us would have traded in for anything. But every once in a while, even when the band was on, you would get a show which you didn't ended up not being exactly what you wanted, but didn't matter. It would just almost get you more psyched for the next night. It was almost like a sports outcome to it. It was like going to a sporting event almost, where your team's playing, you're psyched to see your team, but some nights you lost or just barely won. And so the stage, they played good on the 11th. But when I looked at the set list, I was like, okay, that's why I wasn't so excited about it, because it ended up being like a show that you would never listen to and bring through your life, because there's so many other great shows. The October 12th show is completely different. Almost everything they do here is unique and an incredible show. With just one of the most amazing endings, an ending that almost rivals what they did in Madison Square Garden on September 18th, 1987, with that Watchtower Morning Dew. So first set starts off with Feel Like a Stranger, and they definitely set the tone for the night ahead. They get their funk motor rolling with Feel Like a Stranger. Let's get on with the show. Stranger to Open is followed by Must Have Been the Roses. And I always liked, they didn't do it a lot, but I always liked Must Have Been the Roses in the second spot after a weird opener like Jack Straw or Feel Like a Stranger. Some sweet singing from Jerry on this night. His voice is pretty strong here. And then the show gets back to the funky mode, man. There's definitely a funk thing going on, and it carries through the rest of the show. Plus, obviously, the Grateful Dead, somebody in the band was thinking, hey, let's break out some things we haven't broke out in a while, getting back to the setlist psychology. And they went back to some Reckoning songs that they hadn't played in a year or two. They played On the Road Again, third spot. Something about Electric on the Road Again was always the sign of a great show. They played it 11 times between 81 and 84. This Augusta version on October 12th is the last time they ever played On the Road Again. Cool version. Some of the other great shows where they played it at. They played it Alpine, August 7th, 82. Iowa, 3 days later, 82. Baltimore, 82. Obviously, they did a lot in 80, not a lot, but they did it at great shows in 82. Palo Alto, Stanford, October 9th, 82. So, yeah, On the Road Again was almost like a telltale sign that they were in the right mood, or it could have just been a coincidence thing. But when they played an Electric On the Road Again, it was always in the midst of a great first set on the way to a great show. So that's from they kind of brought it back into they brought it into the rotation from Reckoning, and another song which they hadn't played, Jacaro, in 2 years, I believe since Hartford in 1982. After On the Road Again, they played Jacaro, and what a great, talk about like a little funky beat with a folk song. Very cool version here, great song, and they brought it back for the first time in 2 years, and they kept it in the rotation. So it was a song that they played right up through 95, but they never overplayed it. They would just break it out at the right times, at the right shows. So here they had a reawakening of the Reckoning material, bringing back On the Road Again and Jacaro. And obviously you're out in the audience right now. It's a special night. They're playing cool tunes. In the fifth spot, It's All Over Now. Another kind of upbeat, funky version. Show's rolling along nice. It's All Over Now is another song that, almost like every song in the set, wasn't played often. So they were definitely thinking, hey, let's do something. Let's be a little different tonight. And then they followed up with Cumberland. Once again, another one of those songs. When you catch Cumberland Blues, you're catching a good night. So this is a hot version. The band's ripping through it at a good pace. But it's not exactly a year ago on this date, October 12th, 1983, they played Cumberland Blues at Madison Square Garden, and that is the longest, perhaps the best version. The only version of Cumberland I could think that even is in the same league as the one from Madison Square Garden, October 12th, 83, is Europe 72, the one from April 8th, which is on the Europe 72 album, kicks it off. That one is sensational. And they did some other great versions of Cumberland back then. Good one in San Diego, 73. So there's a lot of great Cumberlands out there. The one from Portland, not quite in that category, but definitely good. And then the set ends with Music Never Stopped. And hey, I was out of my mind with excitement at this time because Music Never Stopped was definitely one of my favorite songs. Plus, it was rare for like 83, 84, even 85. They didn't play it a lot. It kind of fell out of the rotation. They would do it a couple times a year, 2 to 5 times a year, something like that, where it had definitely been a more popular song in the years before. So this entire first set, you're getting all these kind of rare tunes where they definitely said, hey, tonight we're gonna do something different. A little bit of a short set, but it great nonetheless. It created great excitement. The music never stopped. There's so many hot versions of this. This one doesn't go into that category. So that they get the jam going along. And it seems like they just ended pretty quickly. But then Jerry said, wait a minute. He came back with some shrieking notes, and they managed to extend it for another minute or two. Still not like an all contention for some kind of all-time great version or anything, but plenty hot enough to be very pleasing in the time. If you want a great 84 version, check out Harrisburg. I was at that show. It was June 23rd, 84. Yeah, June 23rd, 84. And Music Never Stopped had a great revival after Jerry's coma. They did it in Hartford. I believe it was March 27th. It was either the 26th or 27th. They played a sensational Music Never Stopped. I was like, my God, Jerry is back. It was like that hot. It was almost like a 77 version. And then later in the year, they played a great one at the Philly Spectrum, September 23rd, 1987. So music had a very powerful rebirth, but it was rare in 1984. So that entire first set, very cool first set to catch. By the way, this show, you could go to YouTube and you can find video of this show. And obviously they put the music in, it's a soundboard quality, but the video it's taken from about the opposite side of Jerry. The guy might have been elevated about 10 rows. I think I might have been standing next to him, but really an excellent video. And it kind of gives you that feeling like you're at the show as opposed to professional video. I mean, the sound is professionally done. It's matched up with the video. But when you're watching these videos, it kind of feels like you're there and you're actually standing 10 rows in that first section above the floor watching Jerry, which is the area where I like to stand. So I definitely recommend checking out the video. I'm going to put that video and some of the other versions I'm talking about here on my Deadology Podcast Facebook group. Just type in Deadology Podcast group in Facebook if you want to check it out. I'm going to be putting pictures up, all kinds of stuff from this relating to this episode. But definitely that video is worth checking out because the second set of this is incredible. So the first set was great from the standpoint of set creation and building excitement, even though nothing was like over the top as far as the jamming goes. Second set, another desirable opening to the second set, Cold Rain and Snow. Jerry singing his heart out at the end, just letting it all hang out with so much soul. Very cool version of Cold Rain. And then they do Lost Sailors, Saint of Circumstance, which really I kind of look at it as like a song I crave. Maybe I didn't crave it back in the day when I was in Augusta, October 12th, but it's really one of Weir's great combos. And there's so many hot versions of it. This is not one of them. It's good. They're definitely serviceable. But the reason I'm pointing out that it's not that hot, at this point of the show, you got Cold Rain, Sailor Saint. They follow up with a Brent tune, Don't Need Love. And you can't tell that something insane is coming around the corner. It's not like the show is building to some great climax and you could sense it and cut it in the air. Like on Madison Square Garden, September 18, 1987, the crowd willed it. You could feel all night that they were building to something step by step, Shakedown, Women Are Smarter, Terrapin, and it was in the air. It was tangible. There was no doubt something great was coming. That wasn't the feeling I was, when I was there, I was getting at this show, and even listening to the tape, it's good. Okay, Cold Rain, Sailor Saint, Don't Need Love. One other thing about Don't Need Love, it's a very cool hook, blues hook to that. One day I fell asleep after I was watching the video, and they kept playing the Don't Need Love lick on loop. And I was like, damn, that's pretty cool. It's a very cool blues lick. I wish they would have played the song a little more, maybe added a bridge to the song, developed it a little more, because it's become one of my favorite Brent tunes, but you hardly ever hear it because it wasn't played a lot. But it's something I felt they could have done. They could have taken that song, maybe got Hunter involved, they added a bridge, some more lyrics. That song definitely had some potential, but they kind of just let it slide. But definitely worth a listen. Cool, very cool blues hook on that, man. I like it a lot. And then this is where the show takes off. They decide to play Uncle John's Band. And as I've mentioned in an earlier episode, it was the Oakland show, December 26, 1979, when they brought Uncle John's back into the rotation. Jerry is so happy in that Uncle John's pocket, jamming away. And this version is one of the best versions. He goes off on the first instrumental, And then they get to the end. He's going to the other just going off, man, completely going off. Very cool to watch on the video too. He's just totally digging in, lost in the Uncle John's pocket. And I think this definitely goes as one of the underrated Uncle Johns, because in my book Deadology Volume 2, where I was talking about the 33 essential jam anthems and rating the best versions, not particularly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just mentioning the best versions, I put this one in there. It's that hot. Garcia's playing is crazy on this. And when I was at the show at the time, I realized it was good, but still I'm not feeling that they're going to do something incredible on the other side. But this is really where it starts with the great Uncle John's. This is a top-notch version, definitely noteworthy. They go drum space. So it's actually Coleraine, Sailor Saint, Don't Need Love, Uncle John's. That's pretty good, especially as it's getting hotter with the Uncle John's. They go into space, and a few minutes into the space, Jerry picks the Playin reprise. And, you definitely get that Playin reprise. And the only thing was they haven't played Playin yet. So what's going to happen is going to be the first time they ever did the ending of Playin without ever starting it. They had played Playin the night before, a pretty cool version. But once the show's over, it's closed. So this is just the Playin reprise out of nowhere. And I think they had a master plan, maybe as they did in the first set. I don't know if it was discussed or there was just something in the air. They wanted to do something different. So they come back with the first time they do Playin. And after Jerry states the kind of the melody line of Playin, they go off for about 5 minutes into a nice return, as if they're returning to Playin, just taking their time. Jerry's pecking away. This is my favorite Playin reprise, right up there with Alpine Valley. I also like the one from the Philly Spectrum, 8674, an old school Playin reprise, where they do that Playin, begonias back into Playin. But this one is awesome, man. It just gets the crowd so fired up. At this point of the show, just hearing them go back into Playin at that point without ever starting, it just brought the Civic Center alive. The Civic Center was on fire, and you could just hear Weir pounding the rhythm after they sing the Playin part. The excitement was incredible. We didn't know what was coming, but it brought everything from like a 6 or 7 to a 10. It was blowing the roof off the Augusta Civic Center. And then it was hard to even grasp what might be coming, but they went back to the Uncle John's reprise, which sometimes they would just play Uncle John's and never go back to the reprise. So right after Playin, boom, right back into that Uncle John's reprise. And that's where everybody was like grabbing each other, just like, this is freaking amazing. It was, I get chills every single time I listen to it. Just incredible. So they're going Playin Uncle John's, and anybody who has any sense of history at that time with what the Grateful Dead have done, you're thinking Morning Dew. Last time they had done an Uncle John's Playin Morning Dew was Cow Palace 1974. They did that combo, Playin Uncle John's Morning Dew, Uncle John's Playin. They did it in the Winterland, November 10th, 73. They did maybe the best version of them all in the UCLA Pauley Pavilion. That was November 17th of 73, and then the Cow Palace in 74. So potential history is here, and the crowd is on fire, and anything but Morning Dew would have been a letdown. Just like at that Garden show from 87 after they played Watchtower, it was just Morning Dew was there, thick and heavy, and the part of the excitement of getting into the Uncle John's at that moment, you knew it was coming. And of course they went into the Morning Dew, and just such a great moment. And we're going to take about a 5-6 minute listen here to that the Playin reprise into Uncle John's and the beginning of Morning Dew. You'll get chills as you listen to this. There's no way around it. It's such a great piece of music. And from where I pick up in the Playin, they've already been about 5 minutes into this Playin reprise, just to give you an idea of how good the Playin reprise was on this night. Enjoy. An unexpected thrill seemingly materializing out of nowhere. Playin in the band, into Uncle John's band, into Morning Dew in Augusta, Maine, October 12th, 1984. As I mentioned earlier, that was done 3 times prior, twice in 73 and once in 74 on the West Coast. So that's the only time it was ever done on the East Coast, and it was the last time those songs were strung together. So you never knew when the magic would strike. And on this 1984 tour, just the October 9th show in Worcester and this show, beyond anything I could have dreamed of prior to the tour. That's how good it was. So the Morning Dew, excellent version. Jerry singing surprisingly strong for 1984. Great first instrumental. The second instrumental, Garcia comes out almost too excitedly, like he did in Madison Square Garden in '87. At that show, he came out like in crescendo mode and somehow kept it going for 3-4 minutes. An incredible Morning Dew. This one's amazing in its own way. It seemed like he'd hit these exciting notes early, and then he realized, okay, let me break it down, take it easy, and build it up. And it's a very hot Morning Dew, one of the best I ever seen. Maybe not up there with the Garden, but pretty close. It's a great Morning Dew. I think it was one of the better ones of '84, but once again, 1984 was an excellent year for Morning Dew. So they came around the East Coast in April of '83, and they played 3 dews: Hampton, Philly Civic Center, and Providence, and each one was better than the last. Providence's Jerry's singing was off. His vocals were hurting at that point. But if you want to hear a great Morning Dew jam, that's top 5. It's that good, the Providence one. And this Augusta one, they definitely did it justice for the moment. Great Morning Dew. So the crowd's going nuts. And when you hit a high point like that, walk off the stage, man. They got off, no dragging anything through the mud. No attempt at another song. Let's just get off the stage, come back, do the encore, and call it a night. And they probably would have went for Good Lovin' after Morning Dew because that's what they did for the encore. But Good Lovin', it was even more celebratory in the encore slot. Once again, a little rare to hear that in the encore slot. So it was almost like that was their objective on this night, to break the setlist psychology of what we typically do. You know, if you follow the usual setlist kind of unofficial rules. A China Cat was due. On this night, they went out of their way to kind of do everything different, to throw everything up and, give those people who follow them, snotty deadheads, man, an incredible thrill and a great evening. And it definitely was. So the next nights in Hartford on the 14th and 15th, they got the China Cat Rider Estimated Eyes, and then the following night, the Scarlet Fire. So things kind of returned to normal. And then the final show of the tour, Syracuse, that was one of the best ones on the 20th. They did that killer Jack Strawder in the set. So I'd say the top 3 shows from this tour: Worcester, October 9th, the October 12th, Augusta, and that last show at Syracuse was incredible. The only one I missed for the tour was at my brother's bar mitzvah that day, and they played the best Jack Strawder you'll ever hear. But hey, I've enjoyed it a million times over on tape. So that's the cool thing. We could always go back to the tapes and hear them. So that's my Augusta Psychology set listing. And now it's time for the album of the week. Didn't forget about that. This week's album is from the great Chicago bluesman Otis Rush. And I first got turned on to Otis Rush a few years back. I heard a few of his songs on B.B. King's Bluesville on the radio. But I never had any of his albums over the years. And I was reading Carlos Santana's autobiography. It was a pretty long autobiography, very interesting. I liked it a lot. And several times he mentioned Otis Rush in there and what an influence he was and how great of a player he was. So, of course, I had to dig out an Otis Rush album, find one on my Amazon Music. And I struck gold with the first one I picked. Otis Rush, All Your Love, I Miss Loving, live at the Wise Fools Pub, Chicago. And I'm not going to go into the album too deeply. This is more of a recommendation to go listen to it than I'm going to be really getting into it. But wow, man, this just home run, man. Incredible. Opens up with a great song, Please Love Me. And the thing about this album, just, I read a couple of critiques of it, and the critiques are just horrible because what they critique is the best part of this. I would never remaster this. It sounds like you're at the bar. You have a bottle of beer in your hand or whatever your preference of libation is, a whiskey, whatever. You're at the bar. The music just rings out with this just kind of loud, powerful. You're trapped in a small bar, which is where the Wise Fool's Pub is a modest-sized, or was. It doesn't exist anymore because I would make a field trip there. But the Wise Fool's Pub, small place, great sound. So it's perfect. This recording, if it didn't say pub in the title, you would feel like you're at a pub. However, they made it happen. It's like that intense, that powerful. And the third song, the title song, All Your Love I Miss Loving, probably the most famous, definitely the most famous Otis song. Stevie Ray Vaughan did a cover of it. But one of the interesting things about this song is Carlos admitted that he kind of lifted the melody line from it for Black Magic Woman, which I never heard before. And you got to listen closely, but it's a nice admission on Carlos' part. He pretty much said he just took it right from Otis Rush because he was so moved by this song. And another artist, once I heard this, I was like, obviously Bob Dylan, for one of his this 2009 album, the song Beyond Here Lies Nothing, the opening song of that album, is definitely taken from All Your Love I Miss Loving. And Otis's just the singing, the playing here, just it's so incredible, man. Hard to believe that this powerful Chicago music took place in a tiny little pub. But yeah, you've been there before. You've gone to see these great bluesmen in places in New York City, and if you want to listen to a great album and feel it like you're at the pub, this is the one to check out. Otis's singing is so great, guitar playing so strong, and he was at the height of his powers in 1976, which was a pretty good year for the Grateful Dead as well. But hey, man, that's it. That's episode 4 of season 2, Augusta 84 and Grateful Dead Setlist Psychology. I'm your host, Howard Weiner. I'll be back next week, kicking around a few ideas for next week's show, but definitely be back with another podcast next week. My website, tangledupintunes.com. And thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.